Hi everyone, it's Miss Forster. We're going to be talking about schools. And if you look at these two pictures, one of them is a school from today, and the other one is a picture from maybe 100 years ago. So we're going to be talking about schools from the past and how they compare to schools now. This is something that 100 years ago every classroom had. Do you have any idea what this is? This would provide heat. You had to fill it with coal or with logs, and that was the teacher's job, to be sure that she got there early and filled it so there would be a nice warm classroom for the students. I'll bet you can guess what this is. It's a desk. So 2 students or 3 students sat on the seat, and then there was another one right in front of them for them to write on. Like you can see, the desk part, the tabletop part, is attached to the seat part of the bench. Do you know what this is? This is a lantern. They would have to use a special kind of oil and light it. This was before there was electricity. Here are pages from a workbook from many, many, many years ago. Our workbooks look differently now. This was called a slate, and this is what you use to write on. Well, now while we're learning in school through Zoom and virtual schooling, we're using a whiteboard and a marker. But this is what students used instead of a notebook or paper. They wrote on this slate. It's like a small chalkboard. Wrote their answers, wrote their sentences, did their work. This is something that students would use. It has all the letters of the alphabet. Maybe it's had some short sentences. Today we can laminate a piece of paper to keep it, but this was something that they had as a resource to have all the letters and short sounds and things that they needed to look at to learn. Now, here's gym class. The first picture is probably not 100 years ago because that gym looks not so old. The second picture, also, maybe these are about 50 years ago. But gym class today, we have a nice gym. We have lots of colorful things, hula hoops and balls and things to run around and dance and play in gym class. Learning. Here we have a teacher showing a girl how to do fractions. On the other side, a girl has climbed up on a little bit of a step stool to point to something or to practice with her teacher. And learning today, that's just the same. We write on whiteboards, we use equipment, we put decorations in our classrooms or make silly hats to celebrate things. What do you notice about this classroom? I see the teacher there in the back, but is there something you notice? One thing I noticed right away, how many kids were in one class. Boy, they were big classrooms full of students. And look at all the students holding their hands on their desk. No one is talking or goofing around. With so many students, the teacher had to be very serious. Here's a classroom today. Kids are using desks and tables, and there aren't as many kids in one classroom. Here's some kids learning in a classroom with a map and little cars. There are some children learning with flashcards and games. Here are some children learning with their iPads. This was taken on a night that the parents came to participate in an activity. Lunch. 100 years ago, there was not a cafeteria where they gave you food. You brought a lunch pail or a bucket that looked like one of these. And down inside of it, maybe you had pieces of cheese, pieces of bread, whatever there was to put in your lunch pail to take to school. Now we eat in a cafeteria. Sometimes we bring our lunch from home in fancy lunch bags. Sometimes we get lunch at school and they serve you on a tray with milk or juice and salad. Now you're going to do a seesaw activity about the school because you are amazing. What you're going to do is compare. You are going to think about some of the things that I just talked to you about, and you are going to give me one sentence in your seesaw activity telling me how school was 100 years ago and how it is now. One way that school 100 years ago was the same, and one way that school was different. So think about those things. You only need to write 2 sentences. One sentence tells me how schools are the same from 100 years ago to now. And one sentence tells me how schools are different from 100 years ago to now. Have fun.